My sister-in-law called my niece names at every family dinner, got her fired, then used CPS to take my daughter away after I exposed her. So I dragged her perfect reputation through family court. You see, my niece was 23 when she got pregnant. Her boyfriend abandoned her that same day. My plan was to get the whole family to support her. But my sister-in-law Patricia had other plans. Patricia was the textbook definition of a gold digger who married my brother for the money. Designer bags, country club membership, kids in private school. Good girls don't get abandoned for no reason, she announced at Sunday dinner. What message does this send the younger cousins? I wanted to defend her, but Patricia's father signed my paychecks, so I was forced into being an observer. Over the next few months, Patricia tightened the noose. At every family gathering, she stopped saying Sophie's name out loud and instead referred to her as the leg spreader. She removed her from every family group chat and convinced almost everyone that she had cheated. It was cruel, but Sophie could handle the gossip. She still had her career and income until Patricia decided to take those too. I was eating breakfast when I got the phone call. It was Sophie. Her breathing was so ragged I thought she was having a panic attack. Patricia just told my boss I was getting pregnancy delusions and I was a threat to the babies at the hospital. They cut me down to 1 shift a week. Her voice broke. I'm 7 months pregnant and just lost my health insurance. I'd spent months watching Patricia destroy Sophie for sport. Watching was over. Now it was my turn to play. The annual family reunion was in 2 weeks at Patricia's house. Perfect. My 8-year-old daughter was going to do my dirty work for me. I spent every night rehearsing with Emma. She understood cruelty better than most adults. When we arrived, Patricia's face went from a fake smile to pure rage. You see, she had specifically requested for Sophie not to come, and now there she was rubbing her 8-month pregnancy bump ready to party. She's not welcome here, Patricia said, her tone cold and unforgiving. Surprise, I yelled at the top of my lungs. It's Sophie's baby shower. I shoved past Patricia before she could close the door. 40 relatives turned to stare. Patricia grabbed my arm nails, digging in. Get out or I'll call the police. Emma has prepared something special, I responded, scanning for my daughter. Patricia was already pulling out her phone. I have a poem to read, Emma yelled, getting everyone's attention. She unfolded her paper and began in her clear 8-year-old voice. Patty. Patricia told lies to Sophie's work, and now Sophie can't be a nurse. Patty calls her mean names I'm not allowed to say. She made Sophie lose her money. Please help Sophie. Ahem. Thanks for listening. Patricia's own husband looked murderous. Sophie's mother gasped. Patricia, you called her workplace. Soon everyone turned to face her, looking for answers. Patricia stood frozen, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Then she fled upstairs, her designer heels clicking on marble. The party transformed into an actual baby shower. Relatives apologizing to Sophie, running home for gifts, offering her money for medical bills. I was beaming with pride for both Sophie and Emma. I figured Patricia would just lick her wounds and F off. But 3 days later, CPS knocked on my door at 7 a.m. They'd received a report that I was exposing minors to sexual content. They interviewed Emma alone. They photographed her handwritten notes as evidence. They said the investigation would take 30 days minimum. I knew then that Patricia wasn't done, and neither was I. The CPS worker who showed up wasn't just any investigator. I recognized the tennis bracelet on her wrist immediately. Patricia had bragged about that exact piece at the country club luncheon 2 months ago, showing off how her dear friend Victoria had gotten a matching one. My stomach dropped as Victoria documented Emma's crayon poems, her manicured fingers pointing at phrases while muttering about concerning asexual content. Emma had written about Sophie being called mean names, including leg spreader. Victoria's eyes narrowed as she photographed each page. I wanted to scream that Patricia was her friend, that this was all orchestrated, but I knew how that would sound. Paranoid, unstable, exactly what Patricia wanted. The mandatory psychological evaluation came 3 days later at the county office. I sat in the waiting room, filling out endless forms about my parenting practices. Through the glass partition, I caught a glimpse of blonde hair and designer heels in the hallway. Patricia was at the reception desk, sliding a thick folder across the counter. The receptionist nodded, taking what I could only assume was additional concerned family documentation. Our eyes met through the window. Patricia's lips moved slowly, deliberately. For Emma's sake, she mouthed her expression, a mask of false concern. My hands trembled as I gripped the clipboard. That evening, Emma climbed into my lap, her small face troubled. She told me about the nice lady who kept asking questions. She wanted to know if you taught me bad words about bodies, Emma said, playing with her bracelet. She kept asking about the leg spreader thing. I told her Aunt Patricia said it, not you. But she kept asking if you told me to say that. I called my lawyer immediately. He listened to Emma's account, his silence growing heavier with each detail. When I finished, he sighed deeply. That's coach testimony. They were leading her toward specific answers, but proving it is another matter entirely. The next morning brought unexpected hope. Mrs. Chen Sophie's elderly neighbor shuffled to my door with her walker. She'd witnessed Patricia's harassment firsthand. The late-night visits, the screaming matches in the hallway, the attempts to turn other neighbors against Sophie. I'll testify, she promised, patting my hand with her wrinkled one. But hope crumbled quickly. Mrs. Chen needed hip surgery next month. The only orthopedic specialist who took her insurance worked at Patricia's husband's medical practice. The surgery had already been postponed twice. She couldn't risk a third delay. My phone buzzed with a reminder for the mandatory CPS parenting class. At the same moment, Sophie called. Her voice was strained, scared. She was having contractions and bleeding. The stress was affecting the baby. She needed someone to drive her to her emergency prenatal appointment. I stared at the two obligations, knowing Patricia had orchestrated this perfectly. The CPS class was mandatory. Missing it would be documented as non-compliance. But Sophie was alone, frightened, potentially losing her baby because of what we'd started. Patricia had even posted the class reminder on my Facebook wall that morning. Just making sure you don't forget. Emma needs her mommy to follow all the requirements. The post already had dozens of likes from family members. I chose Sophie. At the hospital, I held her hand through the examination. Her blood pressure was dangerously high. The doctor spoke in careful, measured tones about bed rest, stress reduction, monitoring. Sophie squeezed my hand tighter with each word. My phone vibrated constantly. The CPS coordinator, my lawyer, Patricia's father. I ignored them all, focusing on Sophie's breathing, the baby's heartbeat on the monitor. By the time we left the hospital, I had 6 voicemails. The CPS investigator's message was curt, professional. My absence from the mandatory class had been noted. Patricia had helpfully informed them I was prioritizing my revenge agenda over child welfare requirements. The hits kept coming. My bank called about unusual activity. The legal fee withdrawals had triggered their fraud prevention system. I spent an hour on the phone, proving I was actually the one draining my savings for lawyer fees. Emma's school sent home updated emergency contact forms during an active CPS investigation. They needed current information for all authorized pickups. The secretary's voice was sympathetic but firm. Policies had to be followed. Sophie's blood pressure spiked again that night. The hospital called me as her emergency contact. She needed someone there, someone who could make decisions if complications arose, but Emma's recorded interview with the child psychologist was scheduled for the same time the next morning. Another impossible choice. Another trap Patricia had set. I sat with Sophie through the night, watching monitors, fetching ice chips being the support she desperately needed. My phone showed missed calls from the psychologist's office. Each missed call was another mark against me, another sign of concerning lack of engagement in my daughter's welfare. The morning brought Patricia herself. She swept into the hospital room carrying an elaborate bouquet, a local mommy blogger trailing behind her with a camera phone. I just had to check on family. Patricia announced loudly enough for the nurses to hear. Despite everything, family comes first. The blogger snapped photos as Patricia adjusted. Sophie's pillows with exaggerated care. Within an hour, the images would be on Instagram. Local aunt supports pregnant niece despite false accusations. Patricia had turned my absence from Emma's appointment into a PR opportunity for herself. Emma's teacher called that afternoon. Her voice was carefully neutral as she explained that Patricia had volunteered as an emergency contact given the situation. The school couldn't discriminate based on family disputes, but they wanted what was best for Emma. The unspoken message was clear. Patricia was the stable one, the one who showed up while I was notably absent. I started investigating Patricia's movements that day at the hospital. The visitor log was public record. My hands shook as I compared timestamps. Patricia had signed in at 9:47 a.m. The CPS report had been filed at 10:15 a.m., 30 minutes. Just enough time to make her way to the lobby and make a phone call. The security guard remembered her. Yeah, the blonde lady. She seemed real upset making some important call by the coffee cart. He pointed to the corner of the lobby with clear sightline to the security office. Security footage would show everything. Patricia on her phone at the exact time the CPS report was filed. Proof of premeditation. Proof this was all orchestrated, but footage required a subpoena, and I'd just been caught photographing the security office layout trying to figure out their camera angles. The head of security escorted me out, warning me not to return without proper authorization. Patricia's father called me into his office the next day. My job performance review was spread across his desk. You're distracted, he said, not meeting my eyes. These audit reports need your approval. But I need to know you're focused on work, not family drama. The threat was clear. My job, my income, my ability to fight for Emma, all of it rested in the hands of Patricia's father. That evening, my brother finally reached out. His text made my blood run cold. You're spiraling just like when Mom died. You blamed everyone but yourself then, too. Get help. The words were his, but the phrasing was pure Patricia. She'd fed him the exact narrative to push. I was the unstable one, the one who couldn't let go, the one who needed help. Patricia's next move was breathtakingly cruel. She created a Facebook group called Prayers for Emma. Within hours, concerned relatives and family friends were posting comments about my obvious distress and erratic behavior. Each comment became another piece of evidence for CPS, proof of community awareness of my supposed instability. Sophie tried to defend me online, posting about Patricia's harassment the workplace calls the deliberate cruelty. But Patricia's lawyer screenshotted every post, framing it as coordinated harassment by unstable individuals. Then came the final twist of the knife. Sophie's boyfriend had abandoned her, leaving her without support. Patricia stepped in as her emergency contact at the hospital. She now controlled Sophie's visitor list, her prescription approvals. Sophie's prenatal vitamins required authorization. Patricia held all the cards. The exhaustion was overwhelming. I'd spent all night preparing CPS documentation, trying to build my case with evidence and testimonies. At work the next day, I couldn't keep my eyes open. I dozed off at my desk for just a moment. Patricia's father documented it all. Impairment affecting job performance, another piece of evidence for their case. My best friend Melissa called that night in tears. Her daughter had a rare autoimmune condition. Patricia's husband was the only specialist in the state who treated it. I believe you, Melissa sobbed. But my daughter could die without his care. I can't provide a character reference. I'm so sorry. Even the grocery store became a battlefield. The manager pulled me aside, embarrassed but firm. Patricia had filed a complaint about feeling unsafe when I shopped there. Could I perhaps come during off-peak hours? Later, I discovered Patricia had filed a police report for stalking after we'd crossed paths in the cereal aisle. Small victories felt hollow. Emma's teacher confirmed that the handwriting and spelling errors in the poems matched Emma's usual work. Patricia's claim that I dictated them was clearly false, but what did it matter when the entire system was tilted in her favor? My college roommate, now a social worker in another county, admitted Patricia had contacted her department weeks ago. Preemptive concerns filed about potential psychological abuse. The groundwork had been laid before the reunion even happened. Every move I made to prove Patricia's lies required admitting to something worse. Proving Patricia had lied about Sophie required admitting I'd overheard their private conversation at family dinner. But Patricia had just filed a restraining order. That admission would violate it. When I finally proved one small lie, that Patricia had misrepresented a timeline, the victory was immediately twisted. She's so obsessed with Patricia that she's stalking her at restaurants became the new narrative. The CPS supervisor mentioned something during our meeting that chilled me. This case is unusual, she said carefully. Normally, poem content like this wouldn't warrant a full investigation. Someone is very connected and very concerned about your daughter's welfare. I left her office knowing the truth. This wasn't about Emma's poems or my parenting. This was Patricia systematically destroying me because I dared to fight back. Patricia's strategy became clearer when she befriended my custody lawyer's receptionist through their shared mommy group. I discovered this accidentally when my motion for expedited hearing mysteriously went missing. The receptionist apologized profusely, claiming the paperwork must have been misfiled. It happened again the following week with my evidence submission. Then my request for character witness statements vanished. Each time, Patricia seemed to know exactly what legal moves I'd attempted before my lawyer could even file them. Emma came home from school one afternoon with a troubled expression. She mentioned that Aunt Patricia had spoken to her during the school's fall festival. Patricia had told her that Mommy might need special help soon, but not to worry because she would take care of Emma. My daughter couldn't remember the exact words, but the message was clear. Patricia was planting seeds of doubt in my own child's mind. While organizing my phone to back up evidence, I found an old text message I'd sent Sophie 3 months earlier. My stomach dropped as I read it. Patricia's such a karma will get her. The timestamp showed I'd sent it after Patricia had made another cruel comment about Sophie at a family barbecue. Patricia's lawyer had already submitted this as evidence in their emergency custody petition, painting me as someone who'd been planning revenge for months. The baby shower gifts I'd collected for Sophie during the reunion started arriving at my apartment with passive-aggressive notes attached. Hope this reaches the right person. One card read, "For someone who truly needs support," said another. Patricia had told the relatives I was exploiting a pregnant woman for my personal vendetta against her. The gifts kept coming, each note more pointed than the last. My doorbell camera captured me during a 3 a.m. panic attack on my front steps. I'd gone outside to avoid waking Emma with my crying. The footage showed me pacing, pulling at my hair, clearly distressed. Patricia's lawyer subpoenaed the footage as evidence of mental instability. The timestamp coincided with the night before a custody hearing, which they argued showed I couldn't handle the pressure of parenting. During family court proceedings, I presented my evidence about Patricia's workplace interference. The judge reviewed it briefly before dismissing it as hearsay and part of an obsessive behavior pattern. Without direct proof, my accusations seemed like the ravings of a bitter sister-in-law. Patricia sat across the courtroom, hands folded primly, the picture of concerned stability. I convinced Sophie's colleague to check their internal complaint system. She discovered Patricia had accessed Sophie's schedule through her husband's medical credentials. The digital footprint showed someone using his login had viewed Sophie's shift patterns multiple times before the complaint was filed. It was the first solid evidence of premeditation I'd found. Patricia's Instagram stories about praying for family healing contained subtle timeline details that proved she'd been planning the CPS report before the reunion. One post from 2 weeks before the party mentioned concerns about children being exposed to inappropriate content. Another referenced the importance of protecting innocent minds. She'd been building her narrative for weeks. My therapist was forced to break confidentiality when Patricia's lawyer raised concerns about revenge fantasies I'd discussed in our sessions. I'd been working through my anger in a healthy way, but taken out of context. My words sounded threatening. The therapist had no choice but to report it, given the child welfare concerns now attached to my case. I attempted to record Patricia at Emma's school harvest festival, hoping to catch her making more inappropriate comments to my daughter. Patricia spotted my phone immediately and filed a harassment complaint with the principal. The school had no choice but to ban me from the grounds pending investigation. Patricia volunteered to handle Emma's pickup and drop off to reduce conflict. School pickup became a battlefield of its own. I had to stay 100 feet away while Patricia collected Emma. My daughter would reach for me crying, not understanding why mommy couldn't come closer. Patricia would speak soothingly to her loud enough for other parents to hear about how sometimes grown-ups need timeouts too. My brother finally chose a side when Patricia threatened to expose a DUI he'd gotten in college to his employer. He worked in financial services where such a revelation could end his career. He called me late one night, his voice thick with regret, explaining that he had to protect his own children. His wife had given him an ultimatum and he couldn't risk losing everything. The psychological torture reached new heights when I noticed Patricia wearing Sophie's donated maternity clothes to court appearances. The monogrammed sweater, Sophie had loved the dress she'd saved for special occasions. Patricia wore them all. It was a calculated cruelty, a way to hurt both Sophie and me while appearing generous for taking hand-me-downs. Patricia made an offer through her lawyer. She would drop everything if I signed an affidavit stating Sophie was emotionally unstable and unfit for patient care. The document would effectively end Sophie's nursing career, but would result in the CPS investigation being closed. I stared at the papers, knowing this was exactly what Patricia wanted me choosing between Emma and Sophie. My refusal was immediately reframed in Patricia's emergency motion for temporary placement. I was choosing my vendetta over my daughter's well-being, prioritizing my need for revenge over Emma's stability. The motion painted me as someone so consumed with hatred that I'd sacrificed my own child to hurt Patricia. A breakthrough came when I discovered Patricia had called CPS from the hospital parking lot, not the lobby as I'd initially thought. The security footage timestamp was wrong due to a camera malfunction during a system update. It still proved Patricia's presence at the hospital during the crucial window, but the discrepancy made the evidence less compelling. Sophie had been smarter than any of us realized. She'd been documenting Patricia's harassment in draft emails to herself saved in an old email account Patricia didn't know existed. Months of incidents, dates, times, witnesses, all carefully recorded. Sophie had known she might need evidence someday and had been quietly building her case. The real motive behind Patricia's cruelty finally emerged. Her cousin Marcus was Sophie's ex-boyfriend. Patricia believed Sophie had seduced and ruined him, destroying his future with her pregnancy. It wasn't just about moral superiority, it was personal. Patricia saw herself as avenging her cousin, protecting the family from Sophie's influence. My mother faced an impossible choice. Supporting meant potentially losing access to her son and other grandchildren. Patricia had made it clear that anyone who testified on my behalf would be cut off from that side of the family. Mom chose careful neutrality, offering to supervise visits but refusing to testify for either side. She couldn't bear to lose everyone. I started adopting Patricia's tactics. I joined her gym, timing my workouts to overlap with hers. I frequented her favorite coffee shop, always staying just within legal boundaries. I never approached her, never spoke to her, but my presence was a constant reminder that two could play this game. During a visit at my mother's house, I noticed Patricia's tablet on the kitchen counter. While supposedly checking the weather, I quickly accessed her call history. Screenshots revealed Patricia had obtained Sophie's employer information through my brother's LinkedIn contacts, posing as a reference checker. The evidence was illegally obtained, but it showed the depth of her deception. Sophie's ex-boyfriend Marcus suddenly reappeared, claiming paternity rights. Patricia had convinced him that Sophie had trapped him with the pregnancy, that he needed to protect his parental rights before Sophie could shut him out forever. Fighting custody and paternity battles simultaneously meant I missed Emma's therapy appointment. The therapist noted my absence as part of a pattern of disengagement. Legal fees drained my savings account while Patricia used marital assets to fund her attorney team. I watched my retirement fund disappear, my emergency savings evaporate. Every dollar spent on lawyers was a dollar not saved for Emma's future, a fact Patricia's team emphasized repeatedly. A confrontation erupted at Sophie's obstetrics appointment when Patricia appeared as concerned family. She'd convinced the receptionist she was there to support Sophie, but her real purpose was intimidation. Security removed me when I tried to intervene, adding another incident to Patricia's growing documentation of my unstable behavior. Patricia's father called me into his office on a Friday afternoon. My termination was framed as performance issues and creating a hostile work environment. Multiple absences for court dates, the documented instance of sleeping at my desk, the distraction affecting my work. It all added up to a paper trail supporting my dismissal. He said it was for everyone's good, avoiding my eyes as security boxed up my desk. Moving back in with my parents was humiliating. Patricia posted constantly about providing Emma stability in her real home, sharing photos of my daughter's bedroom at their house, the new clothes she'd bought her, the activities they did together. Each post was a knife twisted deeper. My father begged me to let it go. He saw what the fight was costing, not just financially, but emotionally. Emma was suffering, caught between two worlds. Patricia was winning because she had resources, connections, and most importantly, she could afford to keep fighting. I was running on fumes, destroying myself in the process. My investigation into Patricia's connections caused collateral damage I hadn't anticipated. Sophie's supportive coworker was called into HR about enabling workplace harassment by sharing information with me. The coworker's promotion was suddenly in jeopardy, her judgment questioned. Her husband demanded she distance herself from both Sophie and me to protect their family's reputation and income. Despite knowing my actions were creating ripple effects of damage, I couldn't stop gathering evidence. Every piece of information felt crucial, every lead worth pursuing. Families were dividing. Friendships ending, careers threatened, all because I couldn't let Patricia win. Emma's guardian albitum asked me a question that stopped me cold. Have you considered that your obsession with Patricia is harming Emma? I opened my mouth to respond, to explain about the injustice, the lies, the manipulation. But the words wouldn't come, because somewhere deep down, I knew she might be right. In court, I admitted to recording Patricia without consent at the school event. It was a calculated risk, trading potential criminal charges for credibility. The judge noted my admission, but also emphasized the seriousness of violating recording consent laws. My honesty was overshadowed by my illegal actions. Sophie's draft emails revealed something painful. Months ago, I dismissed her early concerns about Patricia as petty drama. She tried to tell me about the hostile looks, the whispered comments, the subtle exclusions. I told her to rise above it, that Patricia wasn't worth our energy. I should have listened sooner. Patricia's lawyer filed for emergency advancement while my lawyer was handling the custody issue. I was forced to represent myself in the employment case, trying to navigate legal procedures I didn't understand. I had to choose which battle to prioritize, knowing that dividing my attention meant losing ground on both fronts. The truth about Patricia's motivations became clearer. She genuinely believed she was protecting the family from moral decay. In her mind, Sophie represented everything wrong with modern society: women who had children outside marriage, who expected support despite their poor choices. My support of Sophie made me complicit in this moral failing. Patricia's own history explained so much. Her sister had been ostracized for getting pregnant as a teenager. Patricia's parents had cut off all contact, maintaining that tough love was the only way to preserve family values. Patricia had internalized these lessons, believing ostracism was righteous rather than cruel. I crossed an ethical line I never thought I would. During visits with Emma, I started asking her to remember anything strange Aunt Patricia did. I taught her to pay attention to conversations, to remember details that might help Mommy. I was using my 8-year-old daughter as an informant. The old version of me, the one who believed in doing the right thing, died completely. I taught Emma to write things down in her diary, knowing I was manipulating her innocence for my own purposes. When she mentioned Patricia kept a family planning binder, I asked her to remember any details she might see in it. A minor victory in proving Patricia's workplace interference felt hollow when I flinch at raised voices during a court proceeding. My daughter, who once performed poetry with confidence, now shrank from conflict. The trauma of our war was written on her small face. Patricia's counterclaim gained traction. She argued I was parentally alienating Emma from her extended family through false accusations. The guardian ad litem noted Emma's conflicted feelings about family members, her confusion about why she couldn't see certain relatives. It looked exactly like parental alienation to an outside observer. Everything hinged on Sophie's testimony. She was our key witness, the one who could verify Patricia's harassment firsthand. But during deposition prep, Sophie went into premature labor. The stress of everything had finally pushed her body past its limits. As the ambulance took her away, I knew our case was crumbling. Patricia found new ways to twist the knife. When my past babysitting of Patricia's children came up, she coached them to ask why Mommy said I was sick. I couldn't explain the situation without damaging innocent children, so I had to deflect their questions, looking guilty in the process. The hospital staff began choosing sides based on whose spouse provided better insurance coverage. Patricia's husband's practice was stable and comprehensive. My future was uncertain, my ability to provide benefits non-existent. Colleagues who might have supported Sophie stayed silent to protect their own family's health care. The judge explained something that shattered my remaining hope. Emergency custody changes required imminent physical danger, not patterns of emotional manipulation. Lying manipulation, even orchestrated harassment, didn't meet the legal threshold without the threat of physical harm. The system wasn't designed to protect against Patricia's kind of cruelty. I reached out to Sophie's union representative, someone who owed me a favor from past workplace advocacy. She'd helped me when I'd supported her during a grievance procedure. She agreed to provide Sophie with an employment lawyer, but made it clear the union couldn't touch the custody battle. It was partial help that left me feeling more vulnerable than ever. Sophie's emails revealed she'd known Patricia was escalating but had stayed at the job to maintain insurance coverage for her baby. She'd endured weeks of hostile treatment, documenting everything while pretending not to notice. The calculation was heartbreaking. She'd chosen evidence gathering over immediate safety. Discovery produced a shocking find. Sophie had been recording Patricia's behavior in voice memos on her personal phone before the termination. The recordings included Patricia telling a coworker she'd destroy that and laughing about the complaint she'd filed. It was the smoking gene we'd been looking for. But the recording came at a cost. Sophie had endured weeks of workplace hostility to gather admissible evidence. She'd risked her health, her pregnancy, her mental well-being to build a case. When I realized the sacrifice she'd made, the calculated decision to stay in harm's way for future legal protection, I felt sick. I committed to using Sophie's evidence, even though it would expose her to a wrongful termination counter. Patricia's husband's practice could claim she'd violated workplace privacy policies by recording. Sophie could face financial ruin on top of everything else, but we were past the point of safe choices. Patricia's overconfidence finally created an opening. During court-ordered mediation, she admitted she'd had to protect family values from corruption. The mediator was required to report discriminatory statements, and Patricia had just confessed to discrimination based on marital status. It was a crack in her perfect facade. I learned to present evidence calmly without editorializing. Patricia's own words and actions spoke louder than any accusation I could make. The pattern of harassment across multiple venues, workplace, social media. Family gatherings became undeniable when laid out chronologically. Patricia realized too late that she'd created a paper trail of her own cruelty. The judge reviewed our timeline with increasing concern. Phone records, voice memos, employment documents, social media posts all painted a picture of systematic harassment. Patricia's careful planning had been too careful, leaving digital footprints everywhere. Both sides prepared for the final custody hearing with Sophie due any day, the tension reaching its breaking point. The courtroom filled with family members whose names appeared on witness lists. Patricia's parents took seats directly behind me, their presence a calculated intimidation tactic. My hands trembled as I organized my evidence folders, feeling their eyes boring into my back. Both Patricia and I showed visible signs of deterioration from our months-long war. My hair had thinned from stress, leaving patches where I'd unconsciously pulled at it during sleepless nights. Patricia's hands moved constantly, washing invisible dirt from her fingers between each piece of testimony. The sanitizer smell followed her everywhere. The judge methodically reviewed our evidence. Phone records showing Patricia's calls to Sophie's workplace, voice memos capturing her discriminatory language, employment documents proving access through her husband's credentials, social media posts revealing her premeditated timeline, each piece built upon the last, creating an undeniable pattern of harassment. Patricia's mother stood unexpectedly during a recess. The courtroom fell silent as she approached the judge's clerk with shaking hands. She requested permission to testify about Patricia's history. The judge granted it, and Patricia's face drained of color as her mother took the stand. Mrs. Henderson spoke quietly about Patricia's teenage sister, ostracized for pregnancy decades ago. She described Patricia's transformation from a compassionate child to someone who wielded righteousness like a weapon. Her voice broke as she admitted watching Patricia destroy her relationship with her own sister through the same pattern of moral superiority. She couldn't watch it happen again. The judge ordered immediate psychological evaluations for all parties involved. Patricia's evaluation revealed deep-seated trauma from her family's rigid moral structure. My evaluation showed severe anxiety and hypervigilance from months of systematic attacks. Emma's evaluation broke my heart. She displayed signs of confusion and divided loyalty that would require extensive therapy. Sophie's voice memos underwent authentication by an audio expert. His analysis noted escalating hostility in Patricia's language over time. The discriminatory phrases became more frequent and aggressive as Sophie's pregnancy progressed. He classified the recordings as clear evidence of workplace harassment based on pregnancy and marital status. The evidence proved Patricia's harassment and defamation beyond doubt, yet it also revealed something more complex. Patricia genuinely believed she was protecting family values. Her actions stemmed from disturbed reasoning rather than criminal intent. She saw Sophie as a threat to everything their family represented, a corruption that would spread to younger generations if left unchecked. Patricia's breakdown on the witness stand shocked everyone. She sobbed uncontrollably, insisting Sophie would destroy their family's foundation. She spoke about moral decay, about standards slipping, about the duty to protect innocent children from bad examples. Her pain was real, even if her methods were unconscionable. The judge faced a difficult decision. Criminal harassment charges would mean jail time for Patricia, further traumatizing Emma and other family children. Family court resolution would focus on custody and protective orders without criminal penalties. He offered me the choice. I thought about Emma's flinching at raised voices, about the confusion in her eyes when family members fought about the therapy she'd need regardless of the outcome. Sophie sat beside me, 9 months pregnant and exhausted. She squeezed my hand and nodded. We both knew what mattered most. I chose family court resolution, no criminal charges, no jail time, just custody determinations and workplace protections. The judge nodded approvingly at the decision that prioritized Emma's well-being over revenge. The custody ruling came down carefully balanced. I retained primary physical custody of Emma. Patricia received supervised therapeutic visitation contingent on completing intensive therapy addressing her rigid moral framework and harassment behaviors. The judge mandated co-parenting counseling for both of us despite our mutual hostility. Workplace protections for Sophie included a restraining order preventing Patricia or her husband from contacting any current or future employers. Sophie's union lawyer successfully negotiated a settlement with her former employer, acknowledging wrongful termination based on the voice memo evidence. The amount wasn't life-changing, but it provided stability for her and the baby. The family fractured permanently along battle lines. My brother filed for separation from Patricia after learning the full extent of her actions. Some relatives sided with Patricia, believing Sophie had indeed corrupted family values. Others supported me but maintained careful distance to preserve relationships on both sides. Family gatherings as we'd known them would never happen again. I found work at a discount retail store, starting over at minimum wage. The job was mindless but stable, allowing me to focus on Emma's healing. Patricia entered intensive therapy, court-mandated, but seemingly genuine in her participation. Reports indicated she was beginning to understand how her parents' rejection of her sister had shaped her own cruel behaviors. Sophie delivered a healthy baby girl 3 days after the final hearing. I held her hand through labor, the only family member present. She named her daughter Grace, hoping for a fresh start, unmarred by the battles that preceded her birth. Marcus never showed up to claim his paternity rights, his interest evaporating once Patricia's influence waned. Emma's therapy sessions revealed the depth of her confusion. She loved Aunt Patricia despite everything, couldn't understand why adults who claimed to love each other caused such pain. Her therapist worked patiently to help her process the trauma of being caught between warring relatives. Progress came slowly, measured in small victories, like Emma sleeping through the night without nightmares. My parents struggled to maintain relationships with both sides of the fractured family. They hosted separate holiday celebrations, careful never to mention one group to the other. The strain showed in their faces, aged by the conflict that had torn their children apart. They supervised Patricia's visits with Emma neutral ground in an ongoing war. 6 months into the new arrangement, Patricia's therapy reports showed genuine progress. She'd begun to acknowledge the harm her actions caused, though she still struggled with believing her motivations were wrong. Her therapist noted she was working through decades of internalized trauma from her own family's rigid moral structure. I built a new career, slowly taking online courses, while Emma slept. A certificate in human resources led to an entry-level position at a nonprofit helping workplace harassment victims. The pay wasn't much better than retail, but the work felt meaningful. I understood firsthand what victims faced when powerful people weaponized systems against them. Sophie returned to nursing at a different hospital, one with no connections to Patricia's husband. She worked part-time initially, building back her confidence while caring for Grace. We supported each other through the hard days. Trauma bonded but determined to heal. Her daughter grew surrounded by love, if not by extended family. Emma gradually adjusted to our new normal. She stopped asking when everyone would be together again, accepting that some breaks couldn't be mended. Her relationship with Patricia evolved under therapeutic supervision, learning healthy boundaries that hadn't existed before. The confusion faded, replaced by a premature understanding of human complexity. My brother attempted reconciliation after his divorce finalized. Our relationship remained strained, marked by his betrayal when Patricia threatened his career. He saw Emma during my parents' supervised visits. Awkward interactions, heavy with unspoken recriminations. Trust once broken proved impossible to fully restore. The financial impact lingered for years. Legal fees had drained my retirement savings, Emma's college fund, every emergency buffer I'd built. Starting over in my 40s meant accepting that some dreams would never materialize. But Emma was safe, Sophie was free, and Patricia could no longer weaponize systems against us. Patricia's transformation continued slowly. Court reports indicated she'd cut contact with family members who reinforced her rigid worldview. She was building new relationships through therapy groups, learning empathy that had been trained out of her in childhood. Her supervised visits with Emma became less strained as she practiced healthier interaction patterns. 1 year after the custody ruling, I watched Emma perform in her school play. She stood confidently on stage, no longer the traumatized child who flinched from conflict. Sophie sat beside me, Grace sleeping in her arms. Patricia watched from the back row, there by court permission, but maintaining appropriate distance. We were broken but surviving,